This is a story of ex-Chicago Demon, YARMELL, 051 Melly, Williams. Born on November 19, 1991 in Chicago, Illinois. 051 Melly is widely known as an ex-Chicago Demon who was the biggest op of Chicago rapper LIL DURK. According to the streets, 051 Melly was a Chicago Demon who was given the name the Grave Digger because of his high body count, which is believed to be 7 or 8 bodies or even more than that. But as for the story of 051 Melly, it starts off on the south side of Chicago where he was born and raised. According to the streets, during Melly's childhood, he would be raised in the Randolph Towers, which is known as the Calumet Buildings on Chicago's south side. It is said while Melly was still a kid, his mother Angie B would die at the age of 40, and his biological father YARMELL Williams really wasn't in the picture. So since his mother Angie B would die while he was still a kid and his father YARMELL Williams really wasn't in his life, he would be raised by his brother Woo's dad, a man named Jerome Golden, who was a well-known BD around Chicago. According to the streets, it is said once Melly became a teenager, he would start attending DuSable High School where he became a BD and started hanging out with a young man named 051 Zico, who had ties to a set known as 051 Young Money. According to the streets, with the loss of his mother while he was still a kid and his stepfather Jerome Golden going to prison after he was found guilty for 4 murders and armed robbery charges, plus his best friend Zico being killed in 2008, Melly would become very active in the streets, and around this time, the Grave Digger of Chicago would be born. According to the streets, it is believed on February 2nd, 2012, Melly would catch his first body when he killed a 600-member named Shaq, aka Russ, while Shaq was in the alley with a female coming from a party. It is said Melly killed Shaq as a way to get back at 600 after a 600 member killed a 051 member named T Streets. According to the streets, 4 months later after killing 600 member Shaq, Melly and 2 other members of 051 Young Money would set their sights on killing another 600 member named C-Day. But it is said this attack on C-Day wasn't successful because he was able to get away without having a scratch on his body. But according to the streets, while Melly was doing all these attacks on 600 members, he was still living in 600's territory and mocking them on Twitter by confirming he was the one that killed their fallen member, Shaq. According to the streets, on May 31st, 2014, Melly would catch his most known body to date when him and another person shot and killed LIL DURK's blood cousin, OTF Newski, while Newski was sitting inside of a truck outside of a store waiting for LIL DURK. It is said Melly killed Newski as a way to revenge the death of 051 member Lil Mark, who was killed 2 months earlier at a bus stop. The same bus stop LIL DURK made a video about, saying it was a real famous place. According to the streets, on March 27, 2015, about 10 months later after the murder of OTF Newski, Melly would strike again when he killed LIL DURK's manager, OTF Chino, on the 8400 block of South Stony Avenue, while Chino was sitting inside of his car outside of a restaurant waiting for his food. It is said during this attack, Melly ran up on Chino's car and fired multiple shots inside of his car, striking Chino in the head and body. According to the streets, sometime later after the murders of OTF Newski and Chino, Melly would be shot by a THF member named Raheem. As a result of this shooting, Melly would be shot in the head and foot, but he was able to survive the attack. It is said after getting out the hospital and recovering from this near-death experience, Melly would get his revenge for this attack on May 23, 2015, when he shot and killed THF Raheem on the 800 block of East 45th Street. It is said after the murder of THF Raheem, Melly would strike again, this time killing a Folly Boys member named Lil Dale on the 8800 block of South Marshfield Avenue. According to the streets, on May 25, 2018, Melly would run into another near-death experience when him and his friend Mubu Crump were shot outside of a house party they were attending on the 6800 block of South Morgan Street. It is said during this shooting, Melly would be shot 5 times in his arm and suffer a grazed bullet wound to his head, but he was able to survive the attack. But as for his friend Mubu Crump, he would be killed after suffering 4 gunshot wounds to his torso and legs. According to the streets, rumor has it Melly was set up by a well-known Chicago female who was known as the Backdoor Queen, whose real name is Ambriana Collins, aka A. Ambry. According to the streets, on January 25, 2019, It is believed once Melly somehow found out Ambry was involved in a shooting that almost cost him his life, Melly and another person would pick up Ambry and drive around Chicago for a little minute. It is said while they were driving around Chicago, Melly and Ambry would get into an argument that led to Melly shooting her 12 times in her chest, killing her. According to the streets, on September 1st, 2019, 9 months later after the killing of A. Ambry, Melly would be shot and killed while he was at a house party in Gyro City territory. Melly was only 31 years old when he was killed.